The screen flickered. A grainy image appeared, black and white, a dimly lit nursery. The baby's crib stood in the center, motionless. Outside, the wind howled against the mansion's tall windows. Nathan Carter leaned forward, eyes fixed on his laptop screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He had installed the cameras to ensure his son's safety, not because he distrusted the nanny. But now, his heartbeat quickened. On the screen, the nanny stood by the crib, unmoving. Midnight had passed. She was supposed to be asleep. Then, slowly, she turned toward the camera. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. She was smiling. Not the warm, gentle smile she always wore during the day. This was something else, something unnatural. Something wrong. And then, without warning, she whispered something. Nathan slammed the laptop shut. His hands were shaking. What had he just seen? And more importantly, what had she just said? Chapter 1: A Father's Instinct. Nathan Carter wasn't the type of man who panicked easily. He had built an empire in the real estate business, turning failing properties into gold mines. At 42, he was a self-made millionaire with a sharp mind and a calculated approach to everything in life. But this was different. His 3-month-old son, Oliver, was everything to him. Since his wife, Emily, had passed away during childbirth, he had been extra cautious about who he let near his child. When he hired Sophia Mitchell, a 26-year-old nanny with impeccable credentials and glowing references, he had felt a sense of relief. She had been professional, kind, and patient. But what he had just seen on the baby monitor, it sent chills down his spine. Nathan reached for his phone. 2:07 a.m. Should he go check on Oliver? Should he call the police? No, he needed to be smart about this. Instead, he opened the laptop again. He rewound the footage, pressing play with a deep breath. The nursery looked normal at first. The soft glow of the nightlight cast shadows across the walls. Oliver lay still in his crib, sleeping peacefully. Sophia entered the room at 12:41 a.m. She wasn't supposed to be there at that hour. For a while, she just stood by the crib, staring down at the baby. Then she turned toward the camera. The smile. The whisper. Nathan adjusted the audio, amplifying the sound. The static hissed in the background as her voice came through, soft, almost like a lullaby. He belongs to us now. Nathan's stomach dropped. What the hell did that mean? Chapter 2: A Closer Look. Nathan closed the laptop and stood up. He needed answers. Moving quickly but quietly, he grabbed his phone and stepped out of his home office. The hallway was dark, but a faint light glowed from underneath the nursery door. His heart pounded. He slowly twisted the doorknob and pushed the door open just a crack. Sophia was still there. She stood by the crib, humming softly. Her hand rested on Oliver's blanket, gently stroking it. Nathan forced himself to stay calm. He had to handle this carefully. He stepped inside. Sophia. His voice was firm but controlled. She turned her head slowly, as if she already knew he was there. Her face, normally warm and kind, looked strangely distant. "Oh, Mr. Carter," she said softly. "I didn't hear you. What are you doing?" She smiled, brushing a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. Oliver was stirring in his sleep. "I wanted to make sure he was comfortable." Nathan looked at the baby. He was sleeping soundly. His eyes flicked back to Sophia. "I just checked the cameras." For the first time, her expression changed, just for a split second. A flicker of something. Annoyance? Fear? "The cameras," she repeated. "Yes," he said, stepping closer. "I saw you in here. And I heard what you said." She tilted her head slightly. What did you hear? His jaw tightened. You said, he belongs to us now. A long silence. Then, to Nathan's shock, Sophia let out a soft laugh. Oh, Mr. Carter. You misunderstood. His fists clenched. Then explain it to me. She sighed, brushing invisible dust from her sweater. I was talking about how much I care for Oliver. He feels like family to me. That's all I meant. Nathan didn't believe her. Something wasn't right. But he nodded. Fine. Sophia smiled again. You're a great father, Mr. Carter. But you need rest. Don't let paranoia keep you up at night. Nathan forced a smile, but inside, alarms were blaring. Good night, Sophia. He turned and left the room, but as he walked down the hall, he pulled out his phone and sent a message to his private investigator. Find everything you can on Sophia Mitchell. Chapter 3, A Disturbing Discovery. By morning, Nathan's investigator, James Calloway, had sent him a file. Nathan opened it immediately. The first page contained Sophia's basic information, age, background, previous employers. Everything seemed normal. Until he flipped to the second page. A restraining order. Issued 5 years ago by a woman named Diana Evans. Nathan's heart pounded as he read the details. Diana Evans had accused Sophia of stalking her child. The case had been dismissed due to lack of evidence. But Diana had claimed that Sophia had developed an obsession with her infant daughter, sneaking into her nursery at night, whispering strange things to the baby. Nathan's grip tightened on the paper. He glanced toward the nursery. Sophia was in there right now. Had he just put his son in danger? His mind raced. He had to act fast. He pulled out his phone and dialed James. I need you to find Diana Evans, he said. I need to know exactly what happened. Chapter 4, The Truth Unfolds. That evening, James called back. Nathan, you need to hear this, he said. I spoke to Diana Evans. Nathan clenched his jaw. Go on. She told me that when she hired Sophia, everything was fine at first. But then strange things started happening. She would hear whispers coming from the baby monitor at night. Sophia would talk to the baby in a way that was unsettling. Nathan's throat felt dry. Like what? Diana said she heard Sophia whisper, "Your real mother is coming for you soon." Nathan's blood ran cold. James continued, Diana fired her, but Sophia didn't take it well. She started showing up at their house, trying to see the baby. That's when Diana got the restraining order. Nathan closed his eyes. He had to get Sophia out of his house, now. Chapter 5, Face to Face. Nathan stormed into the nursery. Sophia, he said, his voice like ice. She turned, her usual calm smile in place. Yes, Mr. Carter. You're fired. For the first time, Sophia's expression twisted into something dark. Excuse me, she said softly. Nathan didn't back down. Pack your things and leave. Now. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, without a word, she walked past him. Nathan followed, watching as she picked up her coat and bag. At the front door, she turned back. Her eyes locked onto his. You don't understand, she whispered. This isn't over. She stepped out, disappearing into the night. Nathan exhaled, his hands shaking. It was over. Or so he thought. But 3 nights later, the cameras caught something even more terrifying. Sophia was back. Standing outside the nursery window. Watching. Nathan Carter sat in his home office, staring at the security footage. His fingers drummed against the desk as the black and white video played on the screen. Sophia was back. The timestamp read 2:13 a.m. She stood outside the nursery window, unmoving, watching. Her blonde hair was damp from the light drizzle, strands sticking to her pale face. She didn't move. She didn't blink. Nathan's pulse pounded in his ears. He checked the footage from a different camera, one near the gate. Nothing. The security alarm hadn't gone off. How had she gotten inside the property? Nathan rewound the footage. 2:09 a.m. The front gate was closed. The driveway was empty. 2:10 a.m. Still no movement. Then, 2:11 a.m. She was there. No approach. No sign of her walking up. Just, suddenly standing in front of the nursery window. Nathan felt a cold sweat break across his skin. How was that possible? A father's worst nightmare. Nathan rose from his chair so fast it scraped against the hardwood floor. He grabbed his phone and stormed toward the nursery. His son, Oliver, was asleep in his crib. The soft hum of the white noise machine filled the room. The window. Nathan's eyes snapped toward it. Locked. The curtains were slightly parted. He stepped closer and peered outside. The rain had stopped, leaving the grass slick and glistening under the glow of the garden lights. Sophia was gone. Nathan's hands curled into fists. He turned and walked straight to the security panel. He checked the system, still armed. She hadn't come in. Or had she? His phone buzzed. James Calloway. He answered immediately. Tell me you found something. James sighed. Nathan, listen to me carefully. You need to take this seriously. I spoke to Diana Evans again. Nathan's grip tightened on the phone. And? Diana wasn't the only one. Nathan felt a chill. What do you mean? There are two more families. Both hired Sophia. Both had strange incidents. Whispering over the baby monitors. Nighttime visits. One of them woke up to find Sophia standing at the foot of their bed. Nathan's stomach twisted. Here's the worst part, James continued. Every time someone fired her, she disappeared for a while. Then, months later, their babies vanished. Nathan's heart stopped. What? Two families, James said. Two missing infants. No sign of forced entry. No ransom demands. No clues. Just, gone. Nathan's breath came fast. Did the police investigate? Yeah. But nothing ever stuck. The parents were always the prime suspects. No evidence tied Sophia to the disappearances. It was like the babies just vanished into thin air. Nathan's blood turned ice cold. Oliver. He turned and looked at his sleeping son. She's coming for him, Nathan whispered. A desperate plan. Nathan didn't sleep. He sat outside Oliver's room all night, gripping a baseball bat. Every creak of the house made his muscles tense. By morning, he had made a decision. He was getting the hell out. Nathan called his lawyer, arranged an emergency leave from work, and booked a rental house in a gated community outside the city. No one knew the address. Not even his staff. He would disappear. That afternoon, he packed their bags and secured a private transport service. But as he carried Oliver's bag downstairs, his phone vibrated. Unknown number. Nathan hesitated. Then, slowly, he answered. A woman's voice whispered through the line. You can't run, Mr. Carter. Nathan's heart slammed against his ribs. Sophia. Before he could respond, the call disconnected. Nathan's hands trembled as he lowered the phone. She knew. She knew he was leaving. How? A creeping paranoia crawled up his spine. Had she bugged the house? Nathan moved fast. He searched every room, every device, every object. He tore apart the nursery, flipped cushions, checked smoke detectors. Nothing. And yet, she knew. How? He pulled out his phone and called James. I need a background check on my house staff. Everyone. James cursed. You think one of them? I don't know. But she knows things she shouldn't. I'm on it, James said. Stay put. Too late. An hour later, James called back. Nathan. His tone made Nathan's stomach drop. What? One of your staff members, your housekeeper, Elaine, she has ties to Sophia. Nathan's breath caught. What do you mean, ties? She used to work for Diana Evans. She was there when Diana fired Sophia. Nathan's heart pounded. Wait. You're telling me she worked for both of us? Yes, James said grimly. And get this, Elaine was working for the other two families before their babies disappeared. Nathan felt like the floor had been pulled from under him. He turned toward the kitchen. Elaine was standing by the counter, pouring tea. She met his gaze and smiled. Nathan swallowed hard. She knew that he knew. He forced a breath and made a decision. He wouldn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, he smiled back and casually walked upstairs. Once inside his room, he locked the door and dialed James. Send someone. Now. The nightmare begins. Nathan didn't wait. He grabbed Oliver from the crib, wrapped him in a blanket, and stepped into the hallway. Elaine was there. Standing at the bottom of the stairs. She held something in her hand. A baby rattle. Where are you going, Mr. Carter? She asked sweetly. Nathan's grip tightened on Oliver. Out. Elaine smiled. You don't have to run. It's already done. A sick feeling coiled in Nathan's stomach. What's already done? Elaine tilted her head. You'll see. Nathan didn't waste another second. He bolted. He sprinted down the stairs, past Elaine, and out the front door. His car was already running. He strapped Oliver into the seat and jumped in. But as he looked up, Sophia was standing in the driveway. Nathan slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching. He sped down the road, heart hammering. Oliver whimpered in the back seat. It's okay, buddy, Nathan breathed. We're okay. His phone rang. James. Nathan. We traced Sophia's background. Nathan swallowed. And? There was a pause. Then James spoke, his voice tight. Sophia Mitchell doesn't exist. Nathan's hands clenched the wheel. What do you mean? The identity, fake. Her records, fake. It's like she was created. Nathan's breath came short. Then who the hell is she? There was a beat of silence. Then James whispered. She's taken babies before. But we finally found one who came back. Nathan's stomach twisted. Who? James hesitated. Then. A child's voice crackled through the phone, soft. Fragile. She's not real. And she's coming for you. Nathan's hands went cold. The call cut out. And then. From the back seat. A soft, woman's whisper. Nathan froze. His eyes shot to the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. Oliver was gone. And in his place. A single baby rattle. It shook. Once. Then silence. Nathan's hands clenched the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His breath came in sharp, panicked gasps. Oliver was gone. His son, his baby, was just in the back seat. And now, in his place, sat a single baby rattle, rocking slightly as if an unseen force had just set it down. Nathan turned around so fast his neck strained. He patted the back seat, feeling for Oliver, hoping, praying, this was some kind of hallucination. Nothing. The car was empty. A sharp ringing filled his ears. His mind raced. How? How could a baby vanish into thin air? Nathan's chest heaved. He threw open the driver's side door, stumbling into the middle of the dark, rain-slicked road. Oliver. His voice cracked. With desperation, cutting through the quiet night. No answer. Just silence. The streetlights flickered overhead. A breeze whispered through the trees, sending a shiver down Nathan's spine. Then. Tap. 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 A soft knocking sound. Nathan turned slowly, heart hammering. The passenger side window was fogged up from the inside. And there, pressed against the glass, was the faint outline of a tiny handprint. Nathan staggered back. His breathing came in short, rapid bursts. His vision blurred with panic. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown caller. His fingers fumbled as he answered. "Where's my son?" A whisper came through the line. Soft. Eerie. Familiar. "You were warned, Mr. Carter." Nathan's pulse stopped. "Sophia. Give me my son, you psycho." Nathan roared, spinning in circles, searching the shadows. A low laugh echoed through the phone. Then. Click. The line went dead. Nathan swore and gripped his hair. He needed to think. Needed to act. He forced himself to breathe. He wasn't crazy. Oliver had been here. The rattle. The handprint. Sophia had taken him. But how? Nathan's mind replayed everything James had told him. 2 families. 2 missing babies. No forced entry. No clues. It was happening again. But this time, Nathan would not let Sophia win. He climbed back into the car, his hands shaking as he dialed James. The phone rang once. Then. "Nathan." James's voice was tight. "She took him," Nathan said, his voice breaking. "Oliver's gone." A heavy silence. Then James cursed under his breath. "We don't have time," James said. "I've been digging deeper. Sophia's not alone. She's working with someone." Nathan's mind reeled. "Who?" "We don't know yet. But we found something else." Nathan gripped the wheel. "Tell me." James hesitated. Then. "The missing babies, Nathan. None of them were ever found." Nathan's blood ran cold. His throat tightened. What are you saying?" James's voice dropped to a whisper. "They weren't kidnapped. They weren't sold. They weren't hurt. They were just gone." Nathan's grip loosened. His fingers trembled. "Gone?" he repeated. "What the hell does that mean?" James exhaled. "It means they vanished. Like they never existed. The families reported them missing, but there were no signs they were ever born. No birth certificates. No hospital records. The parents swore they had babies, but the world just erased them." Nathan's breath hitched. That was impossible. He pulled up Oliver's birth certificate on his phone. His fingers shook as he scrolled through his files. It was there. Proof. He clicked on it. And then. Error, file not found. Nathan blinked. His stomach twisted. He checked his emails, his hospital records, even his bank transactions for the hospital bills. Nothing. No records. No proof. No evidence that Oliver Carter had ever been born. His hands went numb. This wasn't just a kidnapping. It was something worse. The empty house. Nathan didn't remember driving home. His mind was a blur of thoughts and panic. By the time he pulled into his driveway, the house loomed in eerie silence. The lights were off. The security system was disabled. And the front door was wide open. Nathan grabbed the tire iron from the trunk and stepped inside. The air was thick, suffocating. "Elaine?" Nathan called. His voice echoed. No answer. He moved through the house cautiously, gripping the tire iron. The living room was untouched. The kitchen, spotless. Then, he stepped into the hallway. A single light glowed from the nursery. Nathan's stomach clenched. He moved toward the door, pushing it open slowly. Inside. The crib was empty. Oliver's toys were gone. The walls were bare. And on the rocking chair, Elaine sat motionless, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Nathan's grip tightened. "Where is he?" Elaine looked up, her eyes blank, her face serene. "You shouldn't have fought it," she murmured. She was only taking back what was hers. Nathan's jaw clenched. "Where is my son?" Elaine tilted her head. "You don't remember, do you?" Nathan's skin prickled. "Remember what?" Elaine smiled. "Oliver never existed." Nathan snapped. He lunged forward, grabbing her by the shoulders. "Stop lying to me," he roared. Elaine didn't react. She just stared at him, unblinking. Then, her lips moved. A whisper. Soft. Ancient. Nathan's body locked up. A cold sensation crawled up his spine. His muscles stiffened. His grip on Elaine loosened. His mind fogged. Darkness closed in around him. And then, everything went black. The truth he forgot. When Nathan woke, he was somewhere else. A cold floor beneath him. A dim, flickering light overhead. His head pounded. His throat was dry. He pushed himself up. And froze. The walls around him were covered in photographs. Pictures of babies. Hundreds of them. Their faces blurred. Their names scratched out. Then, his eyes landed on one picture. His heart stopped. It was a photo of Oliver. Except, underneath the picture, written in red ink, was a different name. Elias Monroe. Nathan's breath caught. No. No, that wasn't right. His son's name was Oliver. Not Elias. Not. Nathan stumbled backward, heart racing. The whispers returned. Filling the room. Filling his head. And then, a voice. Soft. Familiar. "You took him from us, Nathan. Now we're taking him back." Nathan spun around. Sophia stood in the doorway, her eyes black as night. And in her arms, she held Oliver. Except, he wasn't Oliver anymore. His tiny mouth curved into a chilling smile. And he whispered, "You don't remember, Daddy. But I do." The lights flickered. The whispers grew louder. And then, darkness. Nathan's world collapsed around him. His son's face, the child he had loved, held, and protected, was staring at him from Sophia's arms. But his name was different. Elias Monroe. Not Oliver. Nathan's head spun. His vision blurred. The room felt like it was closing in. "No," he whispered, shaking his head violently. No. That's my son. His name is Oliver. Sophia's eerie smile never wavered. Her eyes gleamed in the dim light. You still don't remember, do you? She murmured, cradling the baby. The truth is trying to reach you, Nathan. But you keep fighting it. Nathan staggered back, his pulse pounding like a war drum. His hands trembled. This was a nightmare. It had to be. His son existed. He had proof, he had pictures, videos, memories. Didn't he? Nathan grabbed his phone with shaking hands and scrolled frantically through his gallery. Picture after picture of his life appeared. His home. His car. His office. But no Oliver. His son's baby pictures? Gone. His first steps? His first words? Every trace of his existence, erased. Nathan's breath came in short, sharp gasps. This was impossible. He raised his eyes to Sophia, rage burning in his chest. What did you do to him? He growled. Where's my son? Sophia sighed, her expression softening. Nathan. Oliver was never yours to begin with. Nathan froze. His pulse stopped. His fingers curled into fists. You're lying. Sophia stepped closer, rocking the baby gently. The memories you have, the life you think you've lived, it was never real. Not the way you believe it was. Nathan's mind reeled. What the hell are you talking about? He spat. I remember everything. I was there when he was born. I held him in my arms. Sophia tilted her head. Are you sure? Nathan opened his mouth, but the words died on his tongue. A flicker of doubt stabbed through his mind. He tried to remember Oliver's birth. The moment Elaine held him for the first time. The first cry. The hospital room. He squeezed his eyes shut, forcing himself to see it. But the memory was hazy. Blurry. Like a dream that had started to fade. Nathan's breath hitched. No, he whispered, his voice breaking. Sophia's voice was gentle, almost pitying. You're beginning to understand now, aren't you? Nathan's legs felt weak. He stumbled back, pressing his hands to his temples. No. No, this wasn't happening. His son was real. His love was real. But why couldn't he remember? The voices in the dark. The whispers returned. Low. Haunting. Surrounding him. Filling his head. Nathan clutched his skull, shaking violently. Get out of my head, he screamed. Sophia just stood there, watching him with those dark, knowing eyes. You were never supposed to remember, she said softly. You were meant to live your life and forget. But you fought it, Nathan. And now, the past is waking up. Nathan gasped for air. His knees buckled. The whispers grew louder. Then. A flash of something surged through his mind. A memory. A different hospital. A different baby. Nathan wasn't the father. He was just there, watching, waiting. Then. A woman screaming. A nurse begging. And a voice. Take him. Before they find him. Nathan jerked back, his heart hammering. The memory vanished as quickly as it had come. His eyes snapped open, locking onto Sophia's. What did I do? He whispered, his throat tight. Sophia's smile deepened. You stole him, Nathan, she whispered. You stole Elias Monroe. The truth they hid. Nathan's chest burned. His body felt heavy. He shook his head. No. No, that's not true. I would never. Sophia stepped closer. You don't remember because we made you forget, she murmured. But now that you're fighting it, the memories are returning. Little by little. Nathan's pulse pounded. If this was true, if this was real. Then Oliver wasn't his son. Then Elaine had known all along. Then. Nathan staggered back, the room spinning. His hands trembled as he clutched his head. Why, he choked. Why would I steal someone's child? Sophia's eyes darkened. Because they made you believe he was yours. Nathan's blood ran cold. Someone had manipulated him. Changed his memories. Made him think Oliver, Elias, was his. Nathan dug his fingers into his scalp, trying to force his mind to remember. The whispers grew deafening. And then. Another flash. A dimly lit room. A crying baby. A woman, her face obscured, handing the child to him. A voice, low and desperate. They'll come for him, Nathan. Take him. Protect him. No matter what. Nathan reaching out, holding the child, feeling something deep in his soul shift. Nathan's body jerked violently as he was yanked back to the present. His breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. He stared at Sophia. He had stolen this child. He had taken someone's baby. And the worst part? He didn't even remember doing it. Tears blurred his vision. I didn't know. Sophia's expression was unreadable. That's what they wanted. Nathan swallowed hard. Who? His voice cracked. Sophia's lips parted. And she whispered a single name. Elaine. The monster in his home. Nathan's stomach dropped. Elaine, he whispered. No. No, she wouldn't. Sophia watched him, waiting for realization to dawn. Nathan staggered back, his mind racing. Elaine had been acting strange. She hadn't seemed surprised when Oliver disappeared. She had told him, you shouldn't have fought it. Nathan's blood ran ice cold. Elaine knew. Elaine had always known. And now. She was covering up the truth. Nathan's hands clenched into fists. He had spent years loving a child that had been taken from someone else. And Elaine was the one who made him believe it was real. Nathan's jaw tightened. His heart hardened. He wasn't going to let this end here. He wasn't going to let them erase the truth again. He turned to Sophia. Tell me everything, he said, his voice deadly calm. I need to know what she did. Sophia smiled. And she whispered. Then let's begin. Nathan's fingers clenched into fists. His wife, the woman he had trusted, the mother of the child he had loved, had been lying to him. Manipulating him. Erasing his memories. Sophia's voice was soft yet sharp, cutting through the storm raging in his mind. She never wanted you to remember. Nathan's jaw tightened. Why? Sophia tilted her head. Because if you did, you'd realize the truth. And she can't afford that. Nathan's pulse hammered. A memory flickered in his mind, Elaine's reaction when Oliver disappeared. She hadn't panicked. She hadn't cried. She had simply said, you shouldn't have fought it. Nathan's stomach churned. She planned all of this, he whispered, horror sinking in. Didn't she? Sophia nodded. Elaine knew that once you started remembering, everything would unravel. She had to act before it was too late. Nathan's fingers dug into his palms. She took him, didn't she? He growled. She took Oliver, no, Elias, because she knew I was getting too close to the truth. Sophia's expression remained unreadable. There's only one way to know for sure. Nathan's breath hitched. How? Sophia leaned in, her voice like a whisper of wind. Go back home. Nathan's stomach twisted. Home. The place where Elaine had built a life with him. The place where she had lied to his face every day. The place where he would finally get his answers. A house full of lies. The drive home was a blur. Nathan's thoughts spiraled in every direction. By the time he pulled into the driveway, his hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The house loomed before him, silent, dark, empty. Nathan's heart pounded. He stepped out of the car and approached the door. His breaths were shallow, tight. He hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, he turned the key and stepped inside. Silence. Too silent. His instincts screamed at him. Something was wrong. Nathan's gaze swept the living room. Nothing looked out of place, except for one thing. Elaine's laptop, sitting on the coffee table. Wide open. The screen glowed in the dim room. Nathan's pulse quickened. He walked forward and stared at the screen. A folder was open. Labeled, Project Monroe. Nathan's stomach dropped. He clicked it. Files filled the screen, documents, videos, medical reports. His fingers trembled as he opened the first one. The truth hidden in files. A medical report popped up. Nathan's eyes widened as he read. Patient, Elias Monroe. Date of birth, May 3, 2019. Biological parents, redacted. Custody transfer initiated, September 5, 2019. Nathan's heart slammed against his ribs. Custody transfer? He scrolled further. There were signatures at the bottom of the report. One belonged to Elaine. Nathan's breath hitched. He scrolled faster, opening more files. A video file caught his eye. Labeled, Final Transfer, Nathan's Confirmation. Nathan's fingers trembled as he clicked it. The screen flickered. A grainy video began playing. Nathan's own face appeared on the screen. But something was wrong. His eyes, they looked distant. Vacant. Elaine's voice echoed from the speakers. Nathan, do you understand what you're agreeing to? Nathan in the video nodded blankly. Yes. And you accept Elias as your son? Yes. Nathan's blood ran cold. This wasn't normal. He wasn't responding naturally. He looked, controlled. Drugged. Nathan's hands shook violently. Elaine had done something to him. She had altered his mind. The monster in disguise. A sound behind him made Nathan whirl around. Elaine stood in the doorway. Watching him. Her face was unreadable, her arms crossed. Nathan's chest heaved with rage. You drugged me, he snarled. Elaine's expression didn't change. You weren't supposed to remember, she said calmly. That was the deal. Nathan's fists clenched. What did you do to me? What did you do to Elias? Elaine sighed, as if she were tired of the conversation. Then she said something that made Nathan's blood freeze. I saved you. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Saved me from what? Elaine took a step forward. From the truth. Nathan's breath was ragged. What truth? Elaine smiled. A slow, cold smile. You weren't supposed to be his father. Nathan's mind spun. Elaine continued, her voice eerily calm. You were just a tool. A replacement. The real father is someone they were trying to erase. And I needed to make sure you never went looking for him. Nathan's pulse thundered. Who? He whispered. Elaine's smile grew wider. And then. She whispered a name. A name that made Nathan's entire world shatter. A name he had never expected. A name that changed everything. The final confrontation begins. Nathan's body went rigid. The truth was here. He could feel it clawing at his mind. And now, nothing would stop him from uncovering it. Elaine had spent years manipulating him, erasing him, breaking him. But now? Nathan was done playing along. His jaw tightened. His muscles coiled. It was time to end this. Once and for all. Nathan's world stopped. The name Elaine whispered echoed in his skull, shattering everything he thought he knew. His breath hitched, his vision blurred. He took a step back, shaking his head. No, his voice barely escaped his throat. Elaine's lips curved into a knowing smile. You remember now, don't you? Nathan's hands shook violently. Because he did. The memories, the ones Elaine had buried, were surfacing. Ripping through his mind like a violent storm. Images flashed. Police car light, a dark room. A doctor speaking in hushed whispers. Police car light, a signature on a contract. His own handwriting, but he didn't remember writing it. Police car light, a baby crying. A woman's desperate plea, please, don't let them take him. Police car light, a man in a suit. Cold eyes. A chilling voice, Nathan, we need you to do this. For Elias' safety. Nathan's legs gave out. He collapsed onto the couch, breathless. Elaine sat across from him, calm. As if this moment had been planned all along. The truth about Elias' real father. Nathan forced himself to speak. Elias wasn't mine to begin with. Elaine nodded. No. He wasn't. Nathan's pulse pounded in his ears. He was a replacement. A pawn. Who was he? Nathan rasped. Who was Elias' real father? Elaine leaned forward. Her eyes glinted with something unreadable. Your brother. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. His brother? His older brother. Michael Monroe. Nathan's head spun. Michael had died 6 years ago in a car crash. At least, that's what they told him. You're lying, Nathan whispered. Elaine chuckled. Am I? Nathan's stomach twisted. Michael had been the black sheep of the Monroe family. A rebellious, outspoken man who had been digging too deep into the company's secrets. And then, one day, he was gone. They said it was an accident. But now? Nathan wasn't so sure. Elaine's voice pierced the silence. Your brother didn't die in a car accident, Nathan. He was eliminated. Nathan's body went rigid. Eliminated? His voice was barely above a whisper. Elaine nodded. Because he found out the truth about Project Monroe. Nathan's hands clenched. What is Project Monroe? Elaine's smile faded. Her voice dropped. A genetic experiment. Nathan's blood ran cold. Project Monroe, the dark secret. Nathan's heart slammed against his ribs as Elaine continued. Elias wasn't just Michael's son. He was a child created from highly classified genetic modifications. He was supposed to be a breakthrough. A child with intelligence, immunity, and physical abilities beyond the average human. Nathan's head throbbed. And Michael found out, he whispered. Elaine nodded. Yes. And he tried to expose it. But the people behind the project? They couldn't let that happen. Nathan's chest ached. Michael had been killed for trying to protect his own son. And Nathan? Nathan had been used to take his place. To keep Elias safe, Elaine said, watching him closely, they had to erase Michael from existence. And they needed someone to replace him. Someone with a similar genetic makeup. Someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. Nathan's stomach dropped. That's why they chose me. Elaine nodded. They erased your memories. Gave you just enough information to believe Elias was yours. And I was placed in your life to make sure you never remembered. Nathan felt like he was drowning. His entire life had been a lie. Elaine's voice softened. Nathan, you were never supposed to know. I didn't want you to get hurt. Nathan's head snapped up. He let out a hollow laugh. Hurt? His voice trembled with anger. You stole my life from me. Elaine's eyes darkened. I saved you. Nathan stood up, fury blazing in his chest. No, he hissed. You controlled me. Elaine's face hardened. You don't understand, Nathan. If you dig any deeper, they will come for you too. Nathan's hands curled into fists. They already have. The final decision. Nathan turned away. His heart was racing. He knew what he had to do. He had to find Elias. Protect him. Elaine stood. Nathan, listen to me. But he was already moving toward the door. Elaine's voice turned sharp. If you leave, you won't make it out alive. Nathan froze. And then. A gun cocked. Nathan's breath hitched. Slowly, he turned back around. Elaine held a pistol. Aimed directly at his chest. Her hands were steady. Nathan's pulse thundered. You wouldn't, he said. Elaine's expression didn't change. I warned you, Nathan. Nathan's jaw clenched. His mind raced. And then. A sound. Police car light bang. The gun fired. Nathan lunged to the side. Pain ripped through his arm. But he kept moving. Police car light crash. He tackled Elaine, the gun clattering to the floor. She fought back, thrashing against him. Nathan's vision blurred with pain, but he reached for the gun. And then. Police car light another gunshot. Elaine froze. A look of shock on her face. She staggered backward. Her hands trembled as she touched her stomach. Blood seeped through her fingers. She stared at Nathan. Her lips parted. And then, she collapsed. Nathan's chest heaved. The room fell silent. He stood there, panting, staring at the woman who had controlled his life for years. And then. Police car light footsteps outside. Oncoming police car sirens wailing. Nathan turned. The police had arrived. And it was over. 1 year later. Nathan sat on a park bench, watching the sunset. Next to him, Elias played with a toy truck. Safe. Free. After Elaine's death, the truth had come out. The people behind Project Monroe had been exposed. Arrested. Nathan had testified. He had fought. And now, finally, he had his life back. Elias turned to him. Daddy? Nathan's chest tightened. He smiled. Yes, Elias? Elias giggled. I love you. Nathan's heart ached. He reached over, pulling Elias into a tight embrace. No matter what the past had been. The only thing that mattered now was the future. And this time, he would protect it. At any cost.